I thought it was a dream when I heard the doorbell ring. Midnight, too late for deliveries, too early for emergencies. I wrapped the throw tighter around my shoulders and padded softly to the door. Every step lit by the warm amber light spilling from the hallway lamp behind me. I didn't look through the peephole. I just opened it. And there he was. Wet from the rain, his hair dripping onto the collar of a dark hoodie. His jaw shadowed with stubble I hadn't seen in his filtered selfies. He smiled like we'd met before. Like he belonged there on my doorstep, like this wasn't insane. "Hi," he said softly. "It's me." He didn't need to say his name. I knew it, though only by the handle he used in our DMs. For weeks, I'd poured pieces of myself into our messages. My fears. My late-night thoughts. My fantasies. Always behind the safety of a screen, 1,000 miles away from reality. Or so I thought. "What are you doing here?" I whispered. "You said you wished I could just show up," he said, his voice barely louder than the rain behind him. So I did. That's when I felt it, a flicker of warmth deep in my chest, battling with the sudden chill of fear. Because I never told him where I lived, never gave him my last name. And yet he stood there, on my porch, smiling, real. "I know this is a lot," he said. His voice was steady. "But I couldn't stop thinking about you." The silence between us stretched, taut and vibrating with things unsaid. A part of me wanted to slam the door. Another part, the reckless part that had typed him entire pages about how lonely I felt at night, wanted to reach for his hand and pull him inside. He took a slow step forward, not crossing the threshold. His eyes searched mine, tender and uncertain. "Can I come in?" The storm outside seemed to pause, waiting on my answer. And somehow so did I. I should have said no. Every reasonable part of me screamed it, the part that watches true crime documentaries and triple locks the door at night. But when I looked into his eyes, I didn't see danger. I saw something worse. Something harder to resist. I saw someone who knew me. Not just the version I curated for the world. Not the filtered photos or the practice jokes. He knew the girl who cried quietly on Sunday nights. Who craved connection more than she ever admitted. Who had typed things to him she hadn't even written in her journal. "Okay," I said and stepped back. He crossed the threshold slowly, careful not to drip too much water onto the floor, and I closed the door behind him. My heart was pounding like it might burst, but the rest of me was still, held in some strange limbo between thrill and panic. He smelled like rain and something warm I couldn't place, like cinnamon and old pages. It made my stomach tighten unexpectedly. He looked around my living room as if it was familiar, like he'd imagined it before. "I can't believe you're real," he said softly, eyes still on my bookshelves. "I can't believe you found me." He turned then, meeting my gaze. "I had to. After everything you told me, I couldn't just stay behind the screen." I swallowed. "But I never told you my real name." "I know." His voice was so calm it made the hairs on my neck rise. "I guessed. Watched your stories, zoomed in on backgrounds. A street sign once in a reflection. Your dog's tag in one photo had a vet's name. It wasn't hard. Just obsessive." I backed up half a step. "I know how that sounds," he said quickly. "But I swear I'm not dangerous. I just felt close to you. Like I'd already lived in your words for weeks. I had to know if the rest of you was as honest as your messages." And that's when I noticed it. The tremble in his hand, the tightness around his mouth. He was scared too. "I didn't come here to scare you," he whispered. "I just couldn't stay away anymore." There was a pause, deep and silent. Then he reached up slowly and brushed a damp curl away from my cheek. His fingers barely touched me, but I felt it like a spark down my spine. That's when I realized. Maybe I didn't want him to leave. I don't remember moving. One moment we were standing there a foot apart, and the next we were on the couch, facing each other like old lovers trying to pretend this was still innocent. He sat close, not touching me, but the space between us buzzed. My legs were curled beneath me, half covered by the throw blanket, my pulse still unsteady. I could feel the rain tapping softly at the windows like it was trying not to interrupt. "You're different in person," I said finally, my voice hushed, almost shy. "So are you," he murmured, leaning in slightly. But exactly how I imagined. That line might have sounded scripted from anyone else. But from him it felt like a confession. like he'd rehearsed it in silence, hoping he'd one day get to say it. We talked then, softly, slowly, about nothing and everything. How his voice was deeper than I'd guessed. How I chewed my lip when I listened. How strange it felt to be seen not through glass, not through glowing pixels, but here. Skin, breath, warmth. He asked to hold my hand. I said yes. And when our fingers touched, it was nothing like the casual brush of hands on a date. It felt like the air got thicker, heavier. Like my body suddenly remembered how long it had gone without being wanted. He looked down at our hands like they were something sacred. And then his thumb moved, just a slow, lazy stroke across the back of mine. My breath caught. I didn't pull away. I don't know what this is, I whispered. But it doesn't feel safe. He looked up. Neither do I. But it feels real. I nodded barely. Then he shifted closer. My knees brushed his thigh. He didn't lean in for a kiss, not yet. He just looked at me like I was a dream he hadn't dared speak aloud. His hand moved, up my wrist slowly like tracing memory. It wasn't lust. It was hunger with reverence. And I melted. Not in a dramatic way. Just quietly. Like ice meeting skin. Like all my walls got a little softer with every slow touch, every silent second. He was still a stranger. But in that moment it didn't matter. Because my body didn't feel strange at all. Pressed into the space between his presence and my longing. I don't remember who leaned in first. Maybe it was both of us, the way tides lean into the pull of the moon. All I know is that at some point our foreheads touched. Just gently. Just enough to make my heart beat like a slow drum inside my chest. I could feel his breath. Warm. Unsteady. And then his fingers brushed the side of my face. Not like he was claiming me, but like he was memorizing something rare. His thumb traced just below my cheekbone, stopping at the corner of my mouth. I didn't move. Didn't blink. Just breathed. I used to imagine this, he whispered. Wondering if you'd let me look at you the way I wanted. I swallowed. And how's that? Like this. He pulled back half an inch. Just enough to see me. Really see me. His gaze moved slowly, from my lips to my throat, to the curve of my shoulder under the fabric of my sweater. There was something reverent in the way he looked, like he was watching a sunrise he didn't think he deserved. It made my skin flush. My spine straighten. My breath turned shallow. I used to fall asleep thinking about your voice, he said. The way you typed. Your rhythm. My lips parted, but no words came. And now, he continued almost to himself, you're right here. His hand slid down, slow, warm, certain, from my jaw to the base of my throat. His fingers paused there, feeling the fast rhythm of my pulse, the rise and fall of my breath. I didn't move. I couldn't. Everything in me was loud, not in noise but sensation. The weight of his presence. The heat of where his skin met mine. The wild, quiet ache of wanting more without rushing the moment. Then, as if guided by something wordless, I leaned forward just enough. And our lips met. It wasn't a kiss full of fireworks. It wasn't urgent. It was slow, careful, almost afraid to be real. But once it started, I forgot where I was. Forgot that only an hour ago he was just a name on a screen. Forgot that I'd told myself I'd never be the kind of girl who let a stranger in. Because in that moment he wasn't a stranger. He was the sound my heart had been making in silence. His kiss deepened like a secret told twice. Once in fear and once in trust. There was no urgency, no hurried grasping. Just a slow unraveling. Like our bodies were remembering something they hadn't learned yet. His lips moved with a kind of patience I wasn't used to. The kind that says I want to taste everything, not just touch it. He didn't rush. He explored. Every small movement of his mouth against mine felt like a question. And every breath I gave him was the answer. When we finally broke apart, I kept my eyes closed. I needed a second to breathe again. To ground myself. But his forehead was still resting against mine, and I could feel the way he was watching me. Like I was something fragile and wild, and he didn't want to scare it away. What are you thinking? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. I opened my eyes slowly, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't try to hide. That I'm not sure if I want you to stay, or if I want you to ruin me. He blinked like he hadn't expected that much honesty. Then he smiled. Not smug, not cocky, just soft. I think you want both. he murmured. And God help me, I did. His hands moved, tentative but deliberate. One slipped behind my neck, cradling the base of my skull. The other settled gently on my waist, warm through the thin fabric of my shirt. Every point of contact felt like a match against skin. I leaned into him, not because I was weak but because I needed to know how it felt to be held like this. Not claimed, not possessed, but understood. His lips brushed the corner of my mouth again, then my jaw, then just below my ear. I gasped quietly, and felt his breath hitch in response. That's when I said his name. Softly, half sigh, half prayer. And the way he looked at me after that. It wasn't lust. It was hunger wrapped in reverence. Like I'd given him a key he didn't expect to fit. And all at once I knew this wasn't just about desire. It was about being seen and still wanted. Somewhere between his breath on my collarbone and the press of his hand at the small of my back, I stopped thinking. It was like the world narrowed down to one moment, not loud or cinematic but aching with intimacy. His touch wasn't rushed. It was reverent, curious. Like every inch of me was a story he'd only read in fragments, and now he was tracing the pages with his hands. I felt him exhale when I leaned closer, letting my head fall against his chest. His heartbeat was fast, unsteady, not confident like I thought he'd be, but just as affected as I was. And that made something in me melt. I can't believe I'm here, he said into my hair. I smiled, not lifting my face. I'm still not sure I didn't imagine you. You didn't. But I think we imagined this over and over. I nodded, because we had. Not in explicit ways, not always, but in the messages we sent late at night. The ones where we danced around what we were afraid to ask for. Where we admitted we missed things we'd never had. I used to wonder what your skin would feel like, he whispered, brushing his fingertips down my arm. Warm, I breathed. Yeah, like a secret kept just for me. That line made my throat tighten. Not because it was seductive but because it felt true. His hands moved again, this time slower, trailing down my sides, barely touching. Like the whisper of wind before a storm. I closed my eyes and let the sensation spread. His touch wasn't just physical. It was emotional. Like he was listening to every shiver I didn't say out loud. We shifted on the couch, bodies drawn to each other without words. My leg draped over his. His palm settled against my lower back, and he pulled me closer, just enough to make my breath catch. Every move felt instinctive. Honest. There was no performance. No pretending. Just two people who had undressed each other 1,000 times in imagination, now trembling at the reality. And when our lips met again, it wasn't about control or conquest. It was surrender. By the time the rain stopped, we were still tangled in each other. Not in some wild, chaotic way but quietly. Like vines that had grown toward each other without realizing it. The room was dim now, lit only by the glow from the kitchen and the soft hum of night pressing against the windows. His hoodie was half off his shoulder. My sweater had slipped, bearing more of me than I usually let anyone see. But there was no shame. Just breath. Just warmth. We hadn't said much in the last 10 minutes. But every sigh, every small shift of his fingers against my side, every time he let his lips brush my temple, it all said more than words could. I was letting him in. Not just into my space or my body but something deeper. A part of me I usually hid. The soft, trembling part that still didn't know if it deserved this kind of attention. The girl who never really expected someone to stay. And maybe he knew that. Because he held me like I might vanish if he gripped too hard. Do you feel safe? He asked, his voice barely there. I nodded and then more bravely said, yes. Good, he whispered. That's all I care about. That's when something in me broke open. Not in a dramatic way but gently. Like a lock giving in to the right key. I let my hand slide under his shirt, not to start anything but to feel. Skin. Heat. Muscle. The steady proof of someone real, here against me. He inhaled sharply, his body tensing for a moment before relaxing beneath my touch. We looked at each other then. Really looked. No pretending. No trying to be cool or composed. Just two people on the edge of something neither of us could name. I've wanted to know what your heartbeat felt like, I said softly, my hand still resting on his chest. His smile was quiet. Now you do. I rested my head there again, eyes fluttering closed, letting the rhythm lull me. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to run. We didn't fall asleep. We just stayed there, in the quiet, with the kind of stillness that only happens when two people are too full to speak. Not from words, but from presence. From sensation. From whatever had just happened between us that neither of us wanted to define too quickly. Eventually I sat up, pulling the blanket around my shoulders again, feeling the cool air of the room against my skin. He watched me. Not like he was expecting anything. Just watching. As if I was still unfolding in front of him. "You never answered my first question," I said. He tilted his head. "Which one?" "How you really found me." His gaze dropped for a second. He looked almost shy. "I told you. I paid attention. You gave me pieces." "Pieces don't make a whole address." He hesitated. "I work in cybersecurity. For a bank." My stomach dipped. "I didn't use your info maliciously. I swear. I just couldn't stop thinking about you. And one night I followed the threads. I wanted to make sure you were real." I stared at him. The logical part of me sparked to life. Warning lights. Boundaries. All the things I'd been taught. But then, I remembered every word he'd read of mine. Every message he'd answered with care, with humor, with gentleness. Every time he held back when he could have pushed. Every single moment tonight when he chose tenderness over taking. And maybe that's the part that scared me more than his knowledge. That he wasn't dangerous. That he might have seen everything, and still wanted me. "I should be mad," I whispered. "I know. But I'm not. I know that too." I turned to face him fully. My heart was beating louder now, but not from fear. "You read my thoughts," I said. "You saw what I never meant anyone to see." He nodded slowly. "And I came anyway." He reached for my hand again. Our fingers met, and this time I didn't flinch. Because somehow the stranger who knew my name, my address, and all my flaws was the first one who ever made me feel chosen. And maybe that's what made it dangerous. Not how he came into my life, but how he made me never want him to leave. The end.